All right, we're looking today at Galatians 5:13 and 14. Eumizgar epileutheria ekleitheta adelphi, monon metein eleutherian is aformente sarki, ala diates agapes, duleveta aleus. For you, and if you want, you could stick brothers after you. For you, brothers, were called ep. This use of epi may strike you as strange. However, when we take a look at, for example, BDAG, if you look on Bible Works, you can find that this text is, Galatians 5:13 is referenced in Bauer, Danker, Art, and Gingrich's treatment on epi. And we are now at sense number 16 of the preposition epi, and it has a distinct sense of the marker of object or purpose with the dative in reference to something. And notes also 1 Thessalonians 4:7, where God has not called you epi akatharsia, upon or for the purpose of impurity, but in holiness, or having been created epi ergius agathus, good works. So this is a well-documented sense of the preposition epi. And let's just look here. BDAG lists 18 senses for the preposition epi, which is why learning first-year Greek's glosses for your prepositions is really an inadequate way to say that you know what epi means. Okay. So you want to keep that in mind as you work on text. For you were called for the purpose of freedom, brothers, only not freedom for, here the ease, for the purpose or for the result, for an opportunity to the flesh, but implied a freedom to be serving one another through love. But the way Paul says it grammatically is, but through love serve one another. So and I translate it through love, be serving, to capture present imperative. All right, so just let's look together here at these uses. You were called, an aorist passive indicative. Take this to be constative, no view of ingression or completion, just it took place. Brothers is a nominative of direct address. Monos, the Bible Works actually parses this as an adverb. And adverbs you don't give gender, number, and case to. It's certain that it's an adjective that has become fixed in its adverbial significance. I'm not sure whether it ought to be parsed as an adverb or an adjective. I did as an adjective, and if so, it'd be a neuter singular accusative, adverbial accusative. Freedom, you were called only not the freedom. Well, what is this? Why is this direct? Why is this accusative? And where's the verb that it's related to? So my suggestion here is that it's one of two things, either an accusative of reference or the direct object of an elliptical verb to use. Only Don't use the freedom as an opportunity to the flesh, but serve one another by love. If we take a look at this text in relation to Wallace, it doesn't look like he treats the use of the accusative. Let's see if Bloss, de Brunner, and Funk do. They say right here that ina with the dative and predicate nouns. The dative is used by analogy. It is seldom found without the verb, Galatians 5:13. What dative are they talking about? I'm afraid I'm not following that discussion. So I don't see any dative that's free from a preposition. So that's a challenge grammatically. Why is it accusative? And it seems most natural to supply the verb called. You were called, only you were not called in reference to a freedom. So that's why my first option, accusative of reference. But with that reading of the ellipsis, then the second half, the last half of the verse seems strange because he shifts to an imperative. Love one another, or serve one another by love. So if we back up and say, well, what? We have a clue that just dawned upon me, and that is that we have may as the negative here. And that tells us that the elliptical verb cannot be indicative, because we expect may only with the non-indicative. So that's a good reason to anticipate some kind of subjunctive or imperative ellipsis, and gives better support to the direct object of an elliptical verb like use. Though that doesn't rule out the possibility of an accusative of reference. Questions? Okay, the word flesh, opportunity with reference to the flesh, dative of reference. But be serving one another through love, serve, present active, imperative, second plural, progressive present. Although I'd certainly be open to an iterative, since service tends to be iterative as opposed to continuous. The allelus, the dative there, is a direct object. Do love, the verb dilevo requires its direct object in the dative case. All right, that brings us to verse 14. Now let's back up. Let's just think for a minute theologically here. Freedom is almost entirely conceived of in contemporary culture as a freedom to do what I want. And this is where gospel freedom is so countercultural, so counterintuitive, and I think we can say contra our fallen conceptions. That what Christ frees us from is a freedom to be bound to one's own desires, a freedom to actually prioritize others' needs, and thus self-sacrificially serve. We all say, I think, amen. But we mostly tend to hear this while we're sitting in comfort and not when someone is annoying us, when they're overusing our time, crowding our space, asking from us more than we wanted to give. Oh, I love to serve people when I'm rested and have time and have done all the other things that I wanted to do first. And so, and choir tours and string ensemble tours are classic contexts in which your space gets crowded. And then rather than seeing them as exceptional experiences to be judged against normative experience, I think we should view them as crucibles in which to test the reality of our willingness to sacrifice in serving for others. And then our estimation of our maturity takes a hit. All right, verse 14. Whatever I did, I want to undo. Okay. For all the law has been or is fulfilled in one saying / statement. That is, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. All right. And peplerote is a perfect active indicative, perfect passive indicative third singular. Resultative perfect. The focus does seem to be on not on the fact that it has been and results are ongoing, but rather that the result of fullness. I don't remember thinking that one through. Actually, so it has been written, that's different because the writing's done and the results stand. Has been fulfilled. I suspect that fulfilled is the wrong translation. I wonder if the sense is something more like has been summed up in, and thus stands summed up in. Because fulfilled has at least two senses, one being predicted event comes to pass, the second being command given is obeyed, and obedience is the fulfillment. But neither one of those seem to fit contextually with what we've got here. So all the law, let's say all the law is summarized in one saying or statement, and that fits well with what's being stated here. Here the article just functions to substantize the quotation. It makes this entire quote a noun. It has been summarized in the love your neighbor as yourself statement. The future is an imperatival future. So the future active second singular. Your neighbor would be a genitive of association. That's singular genitive. And yourself here is the direct object of an implicit, probably not agapesis, but agapas. Hebrew. Don't want Hebrew. Want Greek. If I get Greek, I've not yet gotten Greek. Shucks. I don't seem to be able to get Greek. Still not getting Greek. Yeah, Hebrew again now. It's being cantankerous. There we go. You shall love your neighbor as you are loving yourself, not as you shall love yourself. Now, I don't think that I bring this out in my discussion in principles, so let me just mention. If you go back to Leviticus 19, verse 18, and read the context in which this command to love your neighbor as yourself is given, it's noteworthy that it's given in a context of conflict and annoyance. So you shall not bear a grudge against your neighbor. You shall surely rebuke him. You shall not incur sin upon yourself. Right? Well, you don't bear a grudge against somebody because they treated you nicely or did you a favor. So it's striking then that this command is originally given in precisely the place where we struggle the most to fulfill it. And need to see then our test of loving our neighbor, not in our spontaneous, generous acts of beneficence and benevolence, but in our response to being sinned against, being irritated, being misused, being ill-treated, misunderstood. All right, that's it for